The security guard's flashlight cut through the darkness as Marcus scrambled out of the water. My daughter's medicine clutched in his trembling hands. That'll be $50 for trespassing, the guard sneered, blocking their escape. But 3 years later, when that same guard approached the gleaming entrance gate, begging for work, Marcus smiled from behind his mahogany desk. The lake that had once humiliated him now bore his name, and everyone who had wronged him would pay literally. The July heat pressed down on Millbrook like a suffocating blanket, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage and making even the shadows feel warm. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he carried his 8-year-old daughter Lily through the woods, her small body burning with fever against his chest. The prescription bottle in his pocket rattled with each step antibiotics that had already cost him his last $100, leaving him with exactly $12.37 to get through the rest of the week. "Daddy, I'm so hot," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible above the cicadas' relentless chorus. "I know, sweetheart." Just a little further. Marcus pushed through the dense undergrowth, following a path he discovered weeks ago during his increasingly desperate job searches. The sound of lapping water grew stronger, and finally, the trees parted to reveal Clearwater Lake, a pristine body of water that sparkled like liquid diamonds under the afternoon sun. But this wasn't just any lake. This was the crown jewel of Millbrook's most exclusive residential community, surrounded by mansions that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Marcus had researched it obsessively after losing his job at the tech startup 6 months ago. The lake was technically private property, owned by the Clearwater Homeowners Association, but the boundaries were poorly marked, and desperate times called for desperate measures. "Can we swim now, Daddy?" Lily's fever-glazed eyes fixed on the water with desperate longing. Marcus hesitated, scanning the shoreline. No security guards in sight. No residents visible in the distant mansions that dotted the hills like sentinels. The water beckoned, promising relief from the oppressive heat. That was making Lily's condition worse by the hour. "Just for a few minutes," he whispered, helping her out of her clothes and into the lake. The moment Lily's feet touched the cool water, her face transformed. The pain lines around her eyes softened, and for the first time in days, she managed a genuine smile. Marcus waded in beside her, feeling the blessed relief as the water enveloped them both. This was what they both needed, not just the physical cooling, but a moment of peace in the chaos their lives had become. For 20 precious minutes, they were just a father and daughter enjoying a summer day. Lily giggled as small fish darted around her ankles. Marcus felt his shoulders relax for the first time since the layoffs had begun, since the medical bills had started piling up, since his ex-wife Jennifer had moved to California with her new husband, leaving him to handle Lily's chronic illness alone. Then the rumble of an ATV shattered their sanctuary. Hey, get out of there right now!" Marcus's blood turned to ice as a security guard in a khaki uniform roared toward them on a four-wheeler, kicking up clouds of dust. The man was built like a linebacker, with small piggy eyes and a permanent scowl that suggested he enjoyed his authority a little too much. "Come on, Lily." Marcus scooped up his daughter, but his movements felt sluggish, like he was moving through molasses. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not when Lily was finally getting some relief. "You're trespassing on private property. This lake belongs to the Clearwater Homeowners Association. I'm sorry we didn't see any signs." "Bullshit." Rick's voice carried the cruel satisfaction of someone who lived for moments like this. "You knew exactly what you were doing. Sneaking in here like some kind of criminal." Lily shivered in Marcus's arms, her fever returning with vengeance now that she was out of the cooling water. "Daddy, I don't feel good." "I know, baby. We're leaving." Marcus started toward their clothes, but Rick stepped sideways, blocking them again. "Not so fast. Trespassing on private property carries a fine in this county. $50. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. $50. He had $12.37 to his name. "Please, my daughter is sick. We just needed to cool down, not my problem." Rick's smile was ugly, predatory. "Should have thought about that before you decided to take a free swim in our lake." Behind Rick, Marcus could see other figures approaching, more security guards, and what looked like residents from the nearby mansions, drawn by the commotion like vultures to roadkill. A woman in tennis whites pointed at them and said something to her companion that made them both laugh. "I don't have $50, Marcus said quietly, his cheeks burning with humiliation. "Then I guess we call the police." Rick pulled out his radio with theatrical slowness. "This is Unit 1 to base. We've got trespassers at the North Shore, requesting police backup for arrest and wait." The word tore from Marcus's throat. He couldn't be arrested, not with Lily depending on him, not when he was already hanging by a thread. "Please, I'll pay you back. I just need time. Time's up, buddy. You made your choice when you jumped in our lake." The growing crowd of onlookers murmured their approval. Marcus caught fragments of their conversations, teaching them a lesson: property values. These people, their faces showed a mixture of disgust, amusement, and the particular satisfaction that came from watching someone else's downfall from a safe distance. Lily began to cry, not the healthy wails of a frustrated child, but the weak, exhausted sobs of someone whose small body was fighting a losing battle. The sound cut through Marcus like broken glass. "She needs her medicine," he said desperately. "She has an infection. The fever should have thought about that before you decided to steal from us." A new voice joined the conversation, a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive polo shirt, who radiated the kind of casual authority that came from never having to worry about money. The name embroidered on his shirt read Gerald Whitmore, HOA, President. "We weren't stealing anything. You were stealing our amenities. This lake is maintained by the homeowners of this community. We pay for the cleaning, the maintenance, the security." Whitmore gestured around him like a king surveying his domain. "What gives you the right to just waltz in here and help yourself?" Marcus wanted to scream that he had every right to seek relief for his sick daughter, that water shouldn't be hoarded by the wealthy while others suffered. But the words died in his throat as he looked at the faces surrounding them, faces that saw him not as a fellow human being in crisis, but as an intruder, a threat to their carefully ordered world. "The fine is $50, Rick repeated, enjoying every second of Marcus's humiliation. "Pay up or get arrested. Your choice." Lily's grip on his neck tightened as another wave of fever shook her small frame. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment: the job loss, the medical bills, the pride that had kept him from asking for help until it was too late. When he opened them again, his voice was steady despite the rage building in his chest. "I'll remember this." The crowd laughed. Whitmore smirked. Rick's grin widened. "I'm sure you will," Whitmore said dismissively. "Rick, make sure they understand. They're banned from this property permanently. If we see them again, we press charges immediately." As Marcus carried his shivering daughter away from the lake, their clothes still damp and their dignity in tatters, he turned back one last time. The crowd was already dispersing, the entertainment over, returning to their air-conditioned homes and perfectly manicured lives. But Marcus wasn't looking at them anymore. He was looking at the lake itself, studying its boundaries, its access points, its relationship to the surrounding land. His mind, sharpened by years in tech and months of desperate research, was already working, cataloging, planning. Rick Sullivan caught his stare and laughed. "That's right. Take a good long look, because you'll never see it again unless you're washing our cars or cutting our grass." Marcus said nothing. He simply memorized every detail of Rick's face, of Whitmore's arrogant smile, of the watching crowd's contempt. Then he carried his daughter into the woods, her fevered whispers the only sound breaking the afternoon stillness. 3 hours later, sitting in the cramped emergency room of Millbrook General Hospital, Marcus held Lily's hand as the 4 drips slowly brought her fever down. The medical bills would destroy what little financial stability he had left. The humiliation at the lake would haunt his dreams. But something else was growing in the space where his desperation had been. Something cold and calculating and absolutely ruthless. He pulled out his phone and began to research. Property records, zoning laws, environmental regulations, water rights, tax assessments. Everything he could find about Clearwater Lake and the people who claimed to own it. By the time Lily's fever broke at 2 a.m, Marcus had found the first crack in their perfect world. And like water finding its way through stone, he would make that crack wider and wider until their entire foundation crumbled. The war for Clearwater Lake had begun, and Marcus Chen was playing for keeps. 3 weeks after the humiliation at Clearwater Lake, Marcus sat in the cramped back office of Millbrook's Planning and Zoning Department, surrounded by towers of dusty filing cabinets and the musty smell of decades-old paperwork. His laptop, balanced precariously on a metal folding chair, its screen filled with property maps, tax records, and environmental impact studies that painted a very different picture of the lake than the one Gerald Whitmore and his wealthy neighbors wanted the world to see. "You're still here?" Janet Morrison, the department's overworked clerk, poked her head through the doorway. She was a thin woman in her 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "It's past 6 o'clock, Mr. Chen, just finishing up. Thank you again for letting me access these records. I know it's been a lot of requests." Janet stepped into the room, her expression curious. "I've been doing this job for 28 years, and I've never seen anyone dig this deep into property records. Mind if I ask what you're looking for?" Marcus hesitated. Over the past 3 weeks, easements and encroachments, and even stayed late to help him access the older records stored in the basement. "I'm trying to understand something that doesn't make sense," he said finally. "Clearwater Lake, the way the property lines are drawn, the water rights, that's some expensive real estate. You're thinking of buying?" "Not exactly." Marcus pulled up a satellite image on his laptop. "Look at this. The current property boundaries show the Clearwater Homeowners Association owning the lake and about 50 feet of shoreline around the entire perimeter. But when I cross-referenced that with the original county surveys, he clicked to a different screen showing a hand-drawn map from 1953. The lake was originally part of a much larger tract owned by the state. So what happened? That's what I've been trying to figure out." Marcus pulled out a thick folder labeled Clearwater Development Zoning Variances, 1987 to 1992. In 1987, petitioned the county to rezone the area from public recreational to private residential. The petition claimed the lake was too small to support public use, and that private development would be more beneficial to the local tax base. Marcus pointed to a signature. At the bottom of the approval document, County Commissioner Harold Whitmore. Janet's eyes widened. Whitmore. And guess who was the primary beneficiary when Pinnacle Properties dissolved and sold the development rights to the newly formed Clearwater Homeowners Association? Marcus clicked through several more documents. Gerald Whitmore himself, along with 5 other investors who just happened to be the first residents of the new community, the pieces were falling into place with mathematical precision. Marcus had spent his entire career analyzing systems, finding the weak points in code, the logic errors that could bring down entire networks. This was just another system illegal and financial one instead of digital, but with the same underlying vulnerabilities. "Jesus," Janet whispered, "that would be illegal." But they manipulated the system to transfer public property to private hands for well below market value. Marcus pulled up another document. The total cost to acquire the lake and surrounding land, $47,000 in 1987. Current assessed value of just the lakefront properties, $12.3 million. "Have you contacted the state attorney general, the EPA? Someone should know about this." "I've tried. Filed complaints with every agency I could think of." Marcus's voice carried the weight of weeks of frustration. "The statute of limitations has run out on most of the potential violations. The people who approved the transfers are dead or retired. And even if someone wanted to investigate, the Clearwater HOA now has legal title to the property. In 10 lifetimes. So that's it. They just get away with it." Marcus smiled, and Janet was surprised by how cold the expression looked on his previously earnest face. "I didn't say that. I said that traditional approaches won't work. But there are other options." He pulled out another folder, this one labeled Environmental Compliance. "Remember how I said the original development petition claimed the lake was too small for public use? Well, that was 35 years ago. Climate change, urban development, agricultural runoff a lot has changed since then." Janet looked confused. "I don't follow. The Clean Water Act requires regular environmental impact assessments for any private development near significant bodies of water. The Clearwater HOA was supposed to file updated assessments every 5 years. Marcus spread out a series of official-looking documents. "It means they're in violation of federal environmental law. And under the Clean Water Act, violations can result in fines of up to $25,000 per day." Marcus's smile widened. "They've been in violation for approximately 10,750 days. Her fingers flew over the keys, and then she stared at the result. That's over $200 million in potential fines. 268,750,000 to be exact, plus interest. Marcus closed his laptop with a satisfied click. But that's just the beginning. Over the next hour, Marcus walked Janet through the rest of his discoveries. Zoning violations where the HOA had allowed residents to build structures that exceeded height limits. In lost revenue, building code violations in several of the lakefront mansions, water usage violations during the drought years of 2018 and 2019. Each violation by itself was relatively minor, the kind of thing that might result in a small fine or a slap on the wrist. But taken together, they painted a picture of an organization that had operated with complete impunity for decades, secure in the belief that their wealth and connections made them untouchable. "This is incredible work," Janet said finally, "but what are you going to do with it? Even with all this evidence, you'd still need lawyers, and good lawyers cost. I know exactly how much good lawyers cost." Marcus began packing the documents back into their folders. "That's why I'm not hiring one." "Then what?" "I'm becoming one." Janet stared at him. "What?" "I took the LSAT last week, scored in the 98th percentile. Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. "I've been accepted to 3 law schools, all with full scholarships. I start classes at state in 2 weeks, but that's a 3-year program, and you have a daughter to support. Lily's been accepted to a gifted program with full childcare support. We'll be fine. The Clearwater HOA thinks they can humiliate people and face no consequences. They think their money and their connections make them invincible. But they made one critical error." "What's that?" "They picked a fight with someone who has nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to study exactly how to destroy them. 3 weeks ago, my daughter and I were desperate for relief from the heat. We found a lake that used to belong to everyone in this county, and we used it for 20 minutes. For that, we were humiliated, threatened, and banned. But we weren't the first." Marcus turned back to face her. "I've been doing more than just research, Janet. I've been talking to people. The Hispanic family who got arrested for loitering near the lake last summer. The veteran who was cited for disturbing the peace when he tried to fish from the public access road. The teenagers who were threatened with criminal charges for swimming in what they thought was a county park." His voice grew harder. "This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. It's about taking back what was stolen from this community and making sure it never happens again." Janet nodded slowly. "What can I do to help?" Marcus smiled, a real smile this time, warm and grateful. "Keep these records safe, and when the time comes, be ready to testify about what you've seen. You can count on it." As Marcus walked out into the evening air, his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen and felt his pulse quicken. "Why didn't you call me? Are you taking proper care of Ursity at 3 in the morning, surrounded by towers of case law books and environmental litigation precedents?" His eyes were bloodshot from months of 18-hour study days, but his mind had never been sharper. On his laptop screen, a complex legal brief glowed in the fluorescent light. V. Clearwater Homeowners Association, a document that had consumed his life for the past 6 months. Still here, Marcus Professor Sarah Kellerman emerged from the shadows between the stacks, carrying her own armload of research materials. She was the law school's premier environmental law expert, a former EPA attorney who'd taken Marcus under her wing after recognizing something dangerous in his quiet intensity. "Final review," Marcus said without looking up. "The complaint gets filed Monday morning." Kellerman set down her books and studied the screen over his shoulder. What she saw made her whistle low. "This is ... comprehensive federal environmental violations. RICO predicate acts, civil conspiracy, fraud upon the court ... She looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Marcus, this isn't just a lawsuit. This is legal warfare." "Good." Marcus's voice carried the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. They declared war first. Kellerman had heard the story. Everyone at the law school had the brilliant tech worker who'd lost everything, humiliated at a lake, who'd walked away from lucrative job offers to spend 3 years studying law with laser focus. Most professors saw him as an inspiration. Kellerman saw something more complex, a man who'd turned his pain into a weapon of surgical precision. "Have you considered the personal cost?" she asked quietly. This kind of litigation, ... it changes you. I've seen it happen to good lawyers. They get so focused on winning that they lose sight of why they started fighting. Marcus finally looked up, and Kellerman was struck by how much he'd changed since that first semester. The desperate father who'd enrolled 3 years ago had been replaced by someone harder, more calculating. His eyes held the cold fire of absolute certainty. "Professor, what would you do if someone hurt your child and then laughed about it?" "I'd want justice. And if the system was rigged to protect them, if every traditional avenue for justice was blocked by money and connections and corruption..." Kellerman didn't answer immediately. In the silence, Marcus pulled up another document on his screen, a detailed timeline spanning from 1987 to the present day. "I've spent 3 years learning everything there is to know about the law," he said. "Not just environmental law, but corporate law, constitutional law, property law, tax law. Every single angle they could use to defend themselves. Every precedent they could cite. Every procedural trick they could pull." His finger traced across the timeline. "And I've found 17 different ways to destroy them. 17. The environmental violations are just the opening move. While they're dealing with those, the tax fraud allegations go public. Each case builds on the others, creates a cascade effect they can't possibly manage with their current legal team." Marcus clicked through screen after screen of meticulously organized evidence. Kellerman found herself drawn into the complexity of his strategy, despite her growing unease. "The beauty of it," Marcus continued, "is that each individual case is ironclad. I'm not relying on technicalities or creative interpretations. Everything I'm alleging is factually accurate and legally sound. They can't claim harassment or frivolous litigation because every charge is legitimate, and you're prepared for their counterattack. Because, make no mistake, Marcus, they will come after you personally. Your finances, your parenting, let them try. I've spent 3 years living like a monk. No debt, no assets they can target, no secrets they can expose. My daughter is thriving in the gifted program, straight A's. Perfect attendance, glowing reports from her teachers. My academic record speaks for itself." He gestured at the wall behind him, where his framed awards covered nearly every inch of space. Law Review Editor, Environmental Law Clinic Director, recipient of the Dean's Award for Academic Excellence. "More importantly," he continued, "I'm not fighting alone anymore." Kellerman raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Remember Janet Morrison from the planning department? She's been documenting every public records request related to Clearwater for the past 3 years, building a database of everyone who's been denied access, everyone who's been intimidated or harassed." Marcus pulled up a spreadsheet with hundreds of names. "Turns out there are a lot of people in this county who've been waiting for someone to stand up to the Clearwater HOA. A class action. Eventually, but first, I need to establish the basic facts in federal court. Once I do that, once the violations are officially documented and the corruption is exposed, then we bring in the real firepower." Marcus clicked to another document, a letter of intent from one of the state's most prestigious law firms, Rodriguez, Martinez and Associates. They specialize in environmental justice cases. They want to take the case pro bono as part of their public interest initiative. Seems that taking down wealthy HOA corruption is good for their reputation. Marcus's expression grew predatory. "They've also offered me a position as junior associate, starting the day after I pass the bar exam." Kellerman stared at the screen, finally understanding the full scope of what she was looking at. This wasn't just personal revenge, was a career-defining case that would establish Marcus as a major player in environmental law, while simultaneously destroying the people who'd wronged him. "There's still one variable I can't control." Marcus pulled up a family photo on his phone, him and Lily at her middle school graduation ceremony 6 months earlier. She'd grown into a poised, intelligent girl with her father's determined eyes and her mother's delicate features. Lily's been asking questions about why we moved so much during law school, why I work so many late nights, why certain people in town look at us differently now. She doesn't know. She knows we were treated badly at the lake. She remembers being sick, remembers the hospital, but she doesn't know about all this. Marcus gestured at the towers of legal documents surrounding them. "I've tried to shield her from it. Maybe it's time to tell her the truth." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The display showed Clearwater security, and Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He hadn't heard from anyone connected to the lake in 3 years. "Mr. Chen?" The voice was nasal, nervous. "This is Rick Sullivan. We met a few years back at the lake." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "I remember. Look, I heard you were in law school now, studying environmental law and such. I was wondering if maybe we could meet, talk about some things. There's stuff about the lake, about the HOA, that maybe you should know." The silence stretched between them. Kellerman watched Marcus's face transform as he processed this unexpected development. "Stuff like what, Mr. Sullivan?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow night? The diner on Route 9, around 8? Marcus looked at Kellerman, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll be there." After ending the call, Marcus sat back in his chair, mind racing. Rick Sullivan, the smug security guard who'd humiliated him, and Lily was reaching out. The question was, why? "Second thoughts?" Kellerman asked. "Desperation," Marcus replied. "He's heard about the lawsuit. Word's gotten out, and now they're all scrambling to protect themselves. Or maybe he wants to help." "People change," Marcus. "Sometimes witnessing injustice bothers people more than they expect." Marcus considered this possibility, then shook his head. "Doesn't matter whether he wants to help or hurt. I'm ready for him." He gestured at the legal brief on his screen. 3 years of preparation, 17 different attack vectors, a team of experienced attorneys backing me up. He closed the laptop and began gathering his papers. "Tomorrow night, I find out what Rick Sullivan thinks he knows. And if Sullivan has information that changes everything." Marcus paused at the library door, his silhouette sharp against the hallway light. "Professor, the only thing that could change everything now would be they decided to give the lake back to the public and compensate every person they've wronged over the past 35 years. And if they did," Marcus's laugh was cold as winter wind, "then they should have thought of that before they made an 8-year-old girl with a fever cry." 3 years of preparation were about to be put to the test. Tomorrow night, he would face the man who'd started it all. Monday morning, he would begin the systematic destruction of everything Gerald Whitmore and his wealthy neighbors had built on stolen land. But first, he had one more conversation to have with the 13-year-old girl sleeping peacefully in their small apartment, who deserved to